I'd like to welcome everyone. My name is Victor Beausoleil, President of the Canadian CED Network's Board of Directors. It is my pleasure to be hosting CEDNet's 24th annual general meeting today. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge all the ancestors that came before us. I want to acknowledge all the individuals and the many ancestors who lived on the various lands that we're on since time immemorial, as well as acknowledging all the land itself from which all life springs. I'm grateful for all of you attending today. If you're joining us, please put yourself on mute. That'd be great. Thank you so much. Before we begin, let's review a few key features of Zoom to make sure everyone has the best experience possible. During the AGM, some speakers will speak in English and others will speak in French. If you're bilingual, don't worry. Thanks to our wonderful interpreters, Lucy and Daniel, you'll be able to listen along in your preferred language without any interruption. Here's how we can access live interpretation on Zoom. Click on the globe icon in the lower navigation bar on your screen. If you want to hear the entire AGM in English, select the Listen in English option. To hear the entire AGM in French, select the Listen in French option. If you select neither channel, you'll be left in the main room and you'll hear each speaker in the original English or French. While in French or English channel, you might consider selecting the mute original audio option. This makes it so that you can only hear the interpreter's voice and not the voice of the original speaker, which some people find distracting. If you select this option, you will need to unmute your original audio when there are speakers are speaking and presenting in their preferred language, because otherwise you won't hear anything. Zoom also offers automatically generated captions in both English and French, and can even translate English speech into French captions and vice versa. Click the Show Captions button on the lower navigation bar. Click the button's small arrow and then the Translate to menu, select your preferred option, a caption language. There's also an option to view the full transcript. Keep in mind that these are automatically generated and likely won't be 100% accurate. If you intend on speaking at any point during the AGM or the Stronger Together award ceremony, it is also important that you update your speaking language to English if you're speaking in English or French if you will be speaking in French. This will improve the quality of the translated caption experience. We ask that you change your display name to include your first and last name with the name of your organization, as well as your pronouns, if you're comfortable doing so. This is so that we can better track attendance and confirm that we have quorum. To rename yourself, you can hover your mouse over your video feed in the Zoom window, click the 3 horizontal dots that appear in the top right corner of your feed, and click Rename. Alternatively, you can hover over your name in the Participants panel, click More, and then click Rename. Also, if you'd like to change the skin tone of your reaction emojis, navigate to Zoom Preferences under General Settings. You'll see an option to select your preferred skin tone. So how will we be handling AGM motions? Well, when a motion comes up, we'll first ask for a mover and a seconder from among the members in attendance. To move or second, you can click on the reaction smiley face icon on the lower navigation bar and click the raise hand feature. If you don't see that option, you can use the applause emoji as an alternative. Let's practice that now. Go ahead, raise your virtual hands or clap them together. Wonderful, thank you, Barb, Mia, Sarah, Ryan. I appreciate all the folks that I can see. If you don't see that option, you can use the applause emoji and alternative. Let's practice that now. We just did. Good. If it looks like many people can raise their hands, so I shouldn't have any trouble getting movers or seconders for resolutions. Meanwhile, I am navigating multiple screens, as you can tell. Once the motion is seconded, we'll launch a poll asking for a vote. You can then click yes or no or abstain to submit your votes. Please only vote if you are a member. Let's try that out. We're going to launch a test poll. Please vote in it. Wonderful. If any of this was challenging or did not work, don't worry. We have a staff providing real-time tech supports throughout the meeting. If at any point you need help, send a message to Matthew. He's one of our tech support team, and he'll help you out. So right now, I have the pride, honor, and humility to begin this remarkable meeting. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for all of you present right now. So we can call the meeting to order. This year, the formal AGM is 1 hour, which will be followed by a 30-minute special ceremony to present the Stronger Together Awards. So at this time, I'd like to hereby call the meeting to order. Our parliamentarian for the day, for the AGM today, in case there are any procedural questions, is our beloved colleague, Ryan O'Neill Knight. Thank you so much, Ryan. So right now, I'd like to verify quorum. Now for the verification of quorum, Melissa Lassard is our credentials officer. Our bylaws require 25 members for quorum. Melissa, with the members in attendance, do we have quorum? Wonderful, thank you so much. Melissa just shared in the chat that we do have quorum. All right. We have a good group of people together, and we want to give everyone a sense of who's here. So please, feel free to type your name and where you're joining us from into the chat box so we can build solidarity and really get to know each other. The next item on the agenda, can I have a mover and seconder from among the membership to adopt the agenda you have before you? Please raise your hand. Wonderful, thank you, Lobi. And thank you so much, Len. I appreciate you. Any questions or comments, you can post them in the chat or raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Now for the votes. Members, please vote in the box on your screen. Wonderful. Thank you so much for your diligence and leadership, folks. We're going to move on to the next item, which is the adoption of the minutes from June 9th, 2022. Now, for the adoption of last year's AGM minutes, can I have two members move and second the adoption of the minutes? Please raise your hand. Wonderful. Matthew, who's the mover and who's the seconder?
I see Ryan moving. And can I get a seconder? Great, I see Karina seconding that.
Thank you so much, Ryan and Karina, for your leadership, and thank you, Matthew, for your diligence. If we have any questions or comments, you can post them in the chat, or if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand and unmute. Now for the votes. Please vote on the poll on your screen. Remarkable. Thank you so much, all of you, for your leadership. For the 2022 review, I'd like to invite our beloved colleague and Executive Director, Michael Toy, for a brief presentation. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. President. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I'm happy to say this year, actually, the annual review is going to be a little different because you've heard me try to summarize our work in a year in a short period of time for a few years now. This time, it's not going to be just me. But before we get into it, one thing that hasn't changed is I'm going to start in French. So if you don't understand French, make sure to switch to the English interpretation channel at the bottom of your screen. Donc, bonjour.
So, good day. As stated in our highlights, 2022 was a year of transition and progress, which I am delighted to share with you. Since its adoption in 2021, the foundation of our work has been based on a theory of change. 2022 was a first full year of its implementation. We continue to evolve and learn how best to achieve the goals we've set for ourselves, and I'd like to thank the members of the Theory of Change Working Committee, both staff and board, who contributed this year. Michelle Colucci, Barb Davies, Katie Damon, Victor Beausoleil, Alex Applin, and Adriana Zielinski. In 2022, we completed an operational restructuring aimed at organizing our activities under the four strategies you see on this slide, each led by a director. That's why I'm pleased to hand over to these people to briefly present the achievements of each and every one strategy. To introduce our work on public policy and government relations, I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Milan. Hello, everyone. I'm really happy to tell you about, it's a pleasure to talk to you about our work in public policy and government relations. I will now switch to English.
In 2022, CEDNet's National Policy Council made an important shift, deciding to focus our policy advocacy efforts on the social innovation and social finance strategy. The national policy priorities, which we update on an annual basis, emphasize the significance of this opportunity. But the results of our annual member survey, which many of you kindly completed earlier this year in January, revealed to us how much of a barrier the language of social innovation, social finance, and social and solidarity economy is. We recognize that a lot of awareness and engagement work is still needed to build political demand for this policy agenda. At the same time, momentum continues to grow. MP Ryan Turnbull's Sustainable Finance Forum held last November mobilized extensive support on Parliament Hill. In fact, plans are underway for a second forum this year. And our own Executive Director, Mike Toy's appointment as chair of the Social Innovation Advisory Council is a testament to the impact CEDNet has been having and will continue to have as we continue to actively work with the federal government for the full implementation of the SISF strategy. Before I finish, I do want to take a moment to thank all the members of the National Policy Council, in particular those who have stepped away over the last year, including outgoing Chair Kelly Dowdell, Rachel Howgate, Barb Davies, Devin Calder, and Lars Bogild. Many thanks also to Candace Zhang and Krisha Oro for agreeing to co-chair the National Policy Council going forward. I'd also like to thank our government relations partners for their moral and financial support of our policy efforts. So that would be CEDAC, Momentum, Operation Come Home, Paro Center for Women's Enterprise, CED Winnipeg, and Quint Saskatoon. Many, many thanks. Just a quick reminder that if you would like to get involved in our policy work, please don't hesitate to send me a quick note. So I'll now turn it over to our Director of Learning and Innovation, Amanda.
Merci, miigwech, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to present the work we've been doing as part of the Learning and Innovation Strategy. We have several programs that you may be familiar with. Our partnership with the National Association of Friendship Centers and the Social Research and Demonstration Corporation continued last year for the Create Action program. Since the program was relaunched in 2020, over 100 young people facing barriers to employment have been placed with social impact organizations and friendship centers across the country. Our community leadership program continues to grow, and Synergia's Climate Action and Transition program completed its first year, followed by the recruitment of 7 partners for year 2. And We've selected 7 new partners, as I just mentioned. And in collaboration with Social Innovation Canada, we offer Adopting Common Measures, a training and coaching program on social impact measurement. And the Community Data Program has added a dashboard offering resources produced by its Solutions Lab on community decision-making tools for housing. Finally, we have completed a longitudinal research project on the impacts of work integration social enterprises. With that, I'd like to hand over to my colleague. It is my first year with the network. I've been here since September, and it took me a while to get familiarize myself with the program, but I'm really encouraged to continue with our members. And I encourage you to communicate with me and to share your experiences and the programs that we have available for you. With this, I'd like to hand over to my colleague, Director of Engagement, Matthew Thompson. Thank you, Amanda.
Communications and information sharing has always been a central function of CEDNet. And our main tool, of course, for doing that has been our website. You might recall that the website we were using was starting to get a bit dusty and creaky. No matter of oil would make it work and look shinier. So after over a year of strategy development, design, and production last fall, we finally made the switch to a new presence. The new website is designed to make the news, events, resources, and jobs we publish easier to find, as well as to make a clear distinction between CEDNet's projects and those from outside the organization. Our newsletters, member communiques, and social media posts relay the content posted up to our website, along with perspectives that reflect the values and priorities articulated in our theory of change. Some of the themes that we've explored in our mailings include applying a CD lens to themes such as Black histories, local enterprise development, climate joy, economic reconciliation, and the biodiversity crisis. Through our communications work, we continue to explore how we can continue to foster opportunities for more engagement with members and prospective members. The new website is a step in that direction, with greater possibilities for us to develop online forums and campaigns to generate and share stories. 2 more recent member engagement strategies we've developed into annual activities are the Stronger Together Awards, which was an important way to celebrate the range of amazing work being done by CEDNet members all across the country, and which we'll be celebrating at the end of our AGM, and our annual member survey, both to track the impacts we're having, as well as to understand what you, our members, need so we can serve you better. We have now completed 2 annual surveys, the results of which are central to our evaluation and planning processes. And we hope that you'll stay online after the AGM to celebrate this year's recipients of the Stronger Together Awards. So now I'll pass the mic over to our Director of Regional and Strategic Initiatives, Sarah Lee Saint-Clim.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Matthew. So in this strategy, regional ecosystem development has long been a strategic priority for CEDNet. Practitioners need supportive structures, policies, and resources that are tuned to their local needs and opportunities. And provincial and local governments really have jurisdiction over a lot of the important policies that affect our work. And that's why, even though we're a national organization, we've often had projects or hubs operating at these levels. And as has been the case for a long time, CEDNet Manitoba continues to be a real inspiration in this area. They build strength, knowledge, connection, and power among community organizations and social enterprises. This year, extensive policy work was rewarded with the passing of the Sustainable Procurement Action Plan in the City of Winnipeg. But also our pro bono matching service Spark received 171 requests for assistance, connecting groups to expert volunteers for a range of capacity building needs. And we shifted learning opportunities to really strengthen economic understanding really deeply. And a huge highlight was bringing the Manitoba Gathering back in person for the first time in 3 years. But beyond Manitoba, we're doing lots of work as well. CEDNet became the administrative partner for Alberta CED, a collaborative of social enterprise and social finance leaders in Alberta. We continued working with partners in Ontario and the Atlantic region and prepared for a new program supporting a variety of initiatives that we're rolling out this year. And nationally, on the strategic initiative sides, CEDNet took on the role of partnership convener for the Federal Investment Readiness Program, aiming to support the 27 or so program partners as a network of expertise grounded in inclusion, equity, and access, building a stronger ecosystem of support for social innovation and social finance. With that, and thanks to all of you, our members, I'll turn things back to Mike.
Thank you, Sarah, Matthew, Amanda, Elizabeth. And so that's exciting. It's a very quick summary of a lot of hard work and many different programs we've got going on in our 4 main strategies. But the reason we have a theory of change is to see whether actually all that work is leading to the change we seek. So as I did last year for the first time, I'm going to try to take a quick look at some of our 4 outcome areas and share what the board and the staff have been finding. Last year was the first year we had indicators to track our progress, which serve basically as benchmarks that we could compare our 2022 data against. And much of the data comes from the annual member survey that Matthew mentioned. So I'd like to say a very big thank you to the nearly 60 members who filled it out. That's about a 30% response rate, which is actually pretty good for this kind of survey. So thank you. Here we go. In terms of political action, there's 2 indicators here that I'm sharing. The first is drawn from a research report that's updated annually, looking at the range of federal and provincial policies related to CED. And it looks like there's some progress there going from 73 to 91, but a key challenge with that report is actually the scope and the definitions being used, which is not as rigorous as it could be. So we're working with George Souza at the University of Alberta and JJ McMurtry at York University to try to strengthen that. The second indicator actually wasn't applicable in 2022 because although we started doing campaigns in 2020 and 2021, 2022 we didn't, because what we were finding from the survey and other feedback was that, as Elizabeth mentioned, there's an important gap in understanding about social innovation and social finance, which has been the main focus of our advocacy. So what we figured out was that we need to do more outreach and education before we can ask members to be effective advocates. So that's a key priority that the Policy Council has been looking at this year, and you should see more about that in the fall. The second outcome of co-creation by diverse sources and voices is cross-cutting and, of course, central. We ask members how they represent people with diverse lived experience and how they considered that they co-create their work with the populations they support or represent. You can see a very big jump in the first indicator, which actually probably raises questions about how people are answering it as much as the substance. And the increase in the second indicator is also very high and no doubt worth exploring further. But I think it's safe to say at least that many respondents recognize the importance of these questions and the principle that is so core to community economic development. The third indicator comes from a self-identification survey of the CEDNet board, leadership team, and staff, where we ask people to self-identify through an intersectional lens of diverse lived experience. And we don't always get 100% response rate to that, but it gives us an idea of where we're at in terms of our own representation. On the other cross-cutting lens in our theory of change is a more explicit focus on ecological and climate considerations. You can see here that the numbers are relatively stable, the small decline in the number of members who consider their primary area of activity to be climate and the environment. That could be because of changes of who responded between the 2 years. But the board, after last year, did ask us to dig in a bit more. But what does this actually mean when people are answering like that? And so on the next slide, there's some examples that were provided, such as using the Sustainable Development Goals to measure impacts, incorporating environmental impacts into CED policies and practices, leading a circular economy project, or working on active transportation. And or how, for example, how essential ecological perspectives are when we're working with, for example, Indigenous women. So my sense is this is a growing sphere of analysis and action for our members and for CEDNet. So the final intermediate outcome around information learning and relationships is where we want members, all of you, to have access to the information learning and relationships and resources you need to be successful in your community work. And we can see some declines here in 2 of the categories from last year that were likely influenced by some vacancies and staff turnover and key roles through 2022 that affected the programming we were delivering. Also, the energy we focused on getting the new website launched last year, and even, as I've mentioned previously, perhaps changes in who responded to the survey. So, but we have set objectives in 2023 to get the numbers back up, and so it'll be good to see how we do. So that's it for our activities and outcomes this year. In summary, I'd like, our ability to measure and communicate the impact we're having is a work in progress. In fact, when the board saw these results earlier this year, the direction provided was to focus not so much on the numbers, the quantitative indicators, which don't tell the whole story, but more on the learning questions and a developmental approach to inform our strategic orientation. So I expect that as we continue this year, we'll have more stories and insights to share in addition to the numbers as we work towards the change that we aspire to. Last year was a particularly challenging one with some key staff transitions, reorganizing, and at the same time growth. But we're very fortunate to have a really superb team in place now. And I'd like to say a very big thank you to each of them, along with the partners and contractors who collaborate on our work and spread out all across the country. The board and our members give us our mandate, but it's the staff and our partners that make it happen on a daily basis. And these folks bring a remarkable level of care and dedication to our shared vision. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mike, for your leadership and commitment to community economic development and all the remarkable things that you and the team are facilitating on behalf of so many. Thank you. So do we have any questions for Mike or the leadership team? If you do have any questions for Mike and the leadership team, you can post them in the chat box or raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Wonderful. I'd like to ask Gail Henderson, CEDNet's treasurer, to present the results of the 2022 audits.
Thank you, Victor. So this year again, our auditors were Group RDL, located in Victoriaville. As part of the audit, the Finance Committee had an initial meeting with the auditors prior to beginning of the audit to review the process and provide specific direction. We met again at the conclusion of the audit to hear the findings. I'd like to thank members of CEDNet's Finance Committee for their time and valuable contributions over the last year. Victoria Morris, Roz Lockyer, Diana Jettig, Barb Davies, who I see is posted in the chat, and Yvonne Poirier, who's also with us today. Thank you very much. The financial statements were provided with the AGM materials, so feel free to follow along in that document. For the presentation, I'll go through the main elements of the audited financial statements, highlighting the important points from the statement of operations and the balance sheet, and go quite rapidly through the presentation in order to leave time for questions and comments afterwards. So the first 3 pages of the document are the auditor's report. This is a standard letter similar to what we've received in the past, following the Canadian accounting standards for nonprofit organizations. The auditors give their opinion that based on their testing, they were able to determine that the financial statements fairly present CEDNet's financial position. So looking at the statement of operations, this slide presents the revenue side of the statement of operations found on page 4 of your handout. In the audited financial statements, the amounts you see on the slide under grants and contribution agreements are amounts received by CEDNet primarily from government and the community and charitable sector for projects that CEDNet is contracted to complete. In 2022, we had an increase in revenue due to multiple federal projects running simultaneously. So this chart compares the sources of revenue, comparing 2021 and 2022. And you can see that the proportion of government revenue represented in the dark blue is slightly larger. Event income, which is the purple, has not recovered to pre-pandemic levels. So this slide presents the main expense categories from the statement of operations. A detailed breakdown of each of these categories can be found in schedules A to D, which are all on the last page of the audited financial statements. So moving on to our balance sheet, which appears on page 6 of the auditor's report. This slide shows the assets. So some funds that had been previously in shorter term cashable investments were moved to longer term instruments, changing their classification, which is why cash is lower than last year and investments is higher in 2022. The liability side of the balance sheet shows that the accounts payable is comparable to last year, and the deferred income has come back down from an unusually high amount at year end last year. So coming to our net assets, we see that our restricted assets have increased to 768,000. The endowment for the Stuart Perry Youth Fund is earning interest. So our reserve policy guides the allocations made for restricted reserves. And this year, the Finance Committee is planning to develop an endowment policy to manage our current endowment fund and any future endowments we might receive. So this chart shows the evolution of CEDNet's income, expenses, and net assets over the existence of the organization. The last couple of years have been ones of remarkable growth, attributable primarily to new federal projects. This chart shows the evolution of financial results for the last 14 years. Our financial situation has shown positive progress since 2016. And finally, this is a chart of the growth in our non-capital net assets since 2003, which parallels the financial growth of the network. So that takes care of the financial presentation, and I'm now happy to invite questions.
Thank you, Gail, and thank you so much for your time and leadership as CEDNet's diligent treasurer. Gail approves all CEDNet expenses twice a month, as well as convenes the Finance Committee and presenting financial reports to the board. It is quite a lot of work that she does with diligence, tenacity, and great care. We so appreciate you. Any questions for Gail, you can post them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and please come off mute to ask your question. I see a question from Krisha.
Yes, thanks, Victor. Thanks for the presentation, Gail. Just a quick question. Happy to see that the revenues have increased from government sources and from trainings and contracts. I do notice that the membership amounts went down. Is there any insight as to which were those more organizational memberships not getting renewed or individual memberships? Any insight you have on that would be great. Thanks.
Thanks, Krisha. I think I'll have to defer to Mike Toy on whether that's an overall change in membership numbers or a change in membership type.
Yeah, that's a good question, Krisha. I think it also might be a question of timing, because I know like the Manitoba team, our membership numbers right now over through the spring are higher than they've been in several years. So I think there might have been a bit of a lapse as we were focusing on other things and more of a push into 2023. And so they're back up now. So I think it was significant, and it's good that you caught that, but I think it was a temporary issue. But to answer your question, the general trend among our membership breakdown between individuals and organizations has been a growth in the proportion of individual members over the last 15 years. And there's no sign of that really changing at this point.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for the overview that we actually have higher memberships than ever before, but also that might explain because the individual memberships are lower dollar-wise than group organization. Right. Thanks very much.
Thanks. I also see a question in the chat from from Shirley. So in terms of the investments, those are just in higher interest bank accounts. Or I think some of them are in GICs that will earn us higher interest because they're locked in for more than 1 year. But CEDNet, so those are the extent of what we're calling investments are just slightly longer term investments through, like, I think GICs.
And I might just add, we do have an investment policy that, sticks our investments to be through the credit unions we do business with. But there isn't necessarily a stronger social ecological lens because of the types of investments that Gail mentioned, but that could be an area for future work, absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you, Carisha, and thank you so much, Shirley. And thank you, Mike and Gail, for the candor and for your responses. So we're going to move on to agenda item number 6.2, the appointment of the auditor. We now need a resolution to appoint the auditor for 2023. The board has recommended continuing with Group RDL for the next year. So we are looking for a motion to do that. Gail, will you make the motion? And can I get a member to second the motion? Well, we have incredible Carisha and Lobby. Thank you so much. Please, members, votes in the poll that is going to pop up on your screen any second now.
Hey, Victor, I'm just having some technical issues launching the poll for the auditor. So maybe what we could do while we figure that out would be to have people use their hand raising emoji, and Melissa and Adriana could do a quick count. So
wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, I would raise hand for yes, and you can give a crying. Sorry, there's an X feature in the reactions, and so use the X for a no under the reaction smiley face, and then abstain just by not voting at all. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. We really appreciate you.
So I see 20 yes.
Wonderful. So we're going to move forward to item number 7, which is resolutions. So last year, there were no resolutions brought to the AGM, so there was no report on resolutions from last year. And this year as well, there are no resolutions that were submitted. So we can continue directly to nomination results. Unless we have time, we can invite Yvonne to speak about past resolutions.
Yeah. Yes, I can do that briefly.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, en français. En 2014,
in 2014, we adopted a resolution. It was about the discovery theory that was addicted by the Vatican in 1595. They want, so it was a royal commission of indigenous people. So we denounced the discovery theory as if this was a racist thing. So on the 31st of March, 2023, the Vatican officially revoked this theory, the discovery theory. It took more than 500 years. It took a long time. But last year, when the Pope came to Canada, Indigenous people insist that they actually revoke this doctrine. In 2020, we adopted a resolution asking the Vatican to recognize Indigenous rights. And we wanted this to be recognized in Canadian laws. This is the C-15 adopted the 21st of June 2021. And they recognize officially the UNDRIP, the UN Nation Declaration of Indigenous People, UNDRIP. So these are the two resolutions that were voted previously with positive results. It's not because of us, but we do recognize that we have members, and this was an important issue for them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yvonne, for your consistent leadership, guidance, mentorship, and commitments to not just the CEDNet board, but community economic development and social economy internationally, and all your work with the UN. And yeah, we just give thanks for all that you do for so many. So we're going to move on to agenda item number 8, report from the elections officer. I'd like to ask Ryan O'Neill-Knight, our elections officer, to present the results of the board's elections this year. Go ahead, Ryan.
Much appreciated, Brother Victor. The 2003 elections report, the board appointed me, Ryan O'Neill-Knight, at their November 28, 2022 meeting to act as elections officer and to perform duties as per CEDNet's bylaws and schedules. The terms of 4 board members were ending at the 2023 annual general meeting. The board approved a call for nominations, which was issued via email and published on the CEDNet website. The deadline was set as April 18th, 2023 of this year. 4 candidacies were received through the call for nominations. The membership status of nominees and supporters was verified. And as a result, the nominees were acclaimed elected for a 3-year term to be ratified at the annual general meeting. The directors elected by acclamation are Victor Beausoleil, Michelle Calusi, Gail Henderson, and Ryan Watma. I would like to express both congratulations and appreciation to these members for their service on the CEDNet Board of Directors. They bring valuable, varied experience and are making a significant contribution to the stewardship and governance of CEDNet. CEDNet prides itself in its member leadership. The board has now taken steps to be more proactive in recruitment. Although this not result in an election this year, I hope that continued outreach to diverse communities will strengthen the democratic fabric of the network, and in a future wide range of candidates will ensure a strong and vibrant governance of the network. Respectfully submitted, Ryan O'Neill-Knight.
Thank you, Ryan, so much for once again your consistent leadership and diligence and your commitment to community economic developments. It is customary to ratify the election officer's reports. Ryan, are you willing to move the ratification?
Yes, I'll move that.
Wonderful. Can I have a seconder to ratify the election officer's reports? Wonderful. I see Kate. Please, so at this moment, I'd like to invite all of you to respond to the poll and vote that should be on your screen now. And thank you for our technical team that's got the poll up. We really appreciate all that you're doing on the back end of this meeting. Brilliant. At this time, I'd like to thank you, Ryan, for your contribution as elections officer. And thank you to all the members who put forward their names to serve as members of the board or as directors. We are fortunate to have such a terrific and dedicated people amongst our members who want to put their time to lead CEDNet. So in terms of appreciations, I'd also like to thank the board members and staff for their contribution to CEDNet and all the members for their support and different types of involvements. In particular, I'd like to thank Nicole, Rose Now Redhead, Katie Allen, and Aftab Khan, who stepped down through this year. A big thank you to Kate Grant, whose mandate is ending today after 2 terms on the board. Thank you, Kate, for your many contributions over the many years. Kay is a remarkable leader, and I see her in community at so many different tables. I'm just honored to be able and privileged to have been able to work alongside you and to continue in other iterations in community economic development. Thank you to all our directors for your diligence and commitment to CEDNet. I'd also like to remind everyone present that CEDNet is led by its members. The board is made up of volunteer members who set the direction and oversee the good governance of the network. We're always interested in having more people involved, whether it is the board or in the policy group or policy council, finance committee, governance committee, or roles related to the AGM, our annual general meeting. If you're interested in getting involved, please reach out to Adriana or any of our board members. And I'm sure Adriana can put her email in the chat. And once again, we give thanks to all of you. So in terms of announcements, we'd like to open up the floor. Are there any announcements? You can post them in the chat box or raise your hand and unmute yourself so that you can speak to any announcements that are happening in your community that you think is relevant to the work that we're doing here today and relevance to the network. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yes, quick announcement happening at the end of this month. We are I'm the co-founder and executive director of the Afro-Caribbean Business Network, and we are chairing the National Black Entrepreneurship Ecosystem Conference. So open invitation to anyone that would like to join us in June. We're going to be in Windsor, June 27th, 28th, 29th, and 30th. So just wanted to let people know that was happening, and we're pretty excited about the second edition of the national conference. And next year, bring it back closer to home, possibly in Ottawa. So I'd love to work with CEDNet as we're planning that one as well. Thanks. Oh, I'll put the link in the chat so you can check it out.
Yes, please do, Ryan. This is remarkable work that you're doing. Planning for almost a year. This is the second one. So I'm excited for you, your colleagues, and the entire ecosystem around that work. An announcement that I'll provide. So myself and many of our colleagues have been working diligently for the past 6 months on developing the Sustainable Finance World Forum. This World Forum, we plan, it's a 5-year strategic plan. The first forum is happening in Ghana, West Africa, December 10th, 11th, and 12th. And we're also in the midst of planning the second inaugural Sustainable Finance World Forum in London, Ontario, with our brilliant colleague, Maureen Cassidy, the Executive Director of Pillar Nonprofit, and a few others. So definitely we would like, if you're interested in joining us in terms of the planning process for next year's or attending this year's, feel free to email the email in the chats, which I'm providing right now, maat@cetc.ca. Wonderful. So with that being said, we're going to move on to item number 11, which is the adjournments. Just before we end the formal portion of this meeting, you should be receiving a short evaluation of the annual general meeting, the AGM, via email. We'd be grateful if you took a minute to give us some feedback on your experience and what we can do to improve things next time. Can I have someone move for the adjournment of the 2023 annual general meeting? Matthew, who's our mover? I see Lobby, David.
Yes, that's right.
And seconder?
I think to adjourn, we just need a mover.
Oh, okay, we have Ryan as well. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. So the meeting has been adjourned at 1:56 p.m. Eastern Standard. Now we move directly into the presentation of the Stronger Together Awards, and I'll turn this over to our remarkable colleague, Mike Toy.